Good morning. Welcome to lecture number 5, OPC Access Types. In this lecture we will talk about the possibility to use the access types to our OPC server. First option is browsing. This option shows us the possibility to browse the elements on OPC servers from OPC client. How it's work? We have the OPC server installed on PLC and we have one computer as the OPC client. OPC client sent the browse request to OPC server. After our client can browse this data from OPC server, the OPC server gives us the response. Browsing data is available inside S7 1200 and 1500 and it's the basic of all access types of OPC UA. Browsing is the basic for all types of data access. Access to information about the OPC UA server like the namespace, data types, number of components in arrays. We have also possibility to read the information about the OPC UA server. We can read data about the S7 1500 and we can read some references. Next access types is the read and write data. We can have the asynchronous data access. How it's work? We have again PLC with OPC UA server and computer with OPC UA client. OPC UA client requests the read-write data. We send from the client to server the request, and if our OPC UA server allow this data to read and write, is giving OPC UA the client response. So if we want to read or write data from OPC UA server, we need to send the request. After we have possibility, the OPC UA server give us the response. This access type is possible in 1200 and 1500 S7 PLC. Reading and writing data of PLC tags, DB, components, arrays and structures type. In this access type, we need to have the access level of the PLC to make the read and write data. I will show in practical modes. The timestamp of PLC tags cannot be written, so we can't write timestamps into our PLC tags in this read and write access type. Let's go to third access type. We have registered read-write data. It's the high performance for repeated data access. Again, we have OPC UA server on PLC and we have OPC UA client on computer. After we want to use this option, we need to send the register node request. Server is giving us the response if this client can work with this server. After we have the registered nodes, the client can send the read and write request and server giving us the read-write response. This access type is high performance for reading and writing data because we only once need to register node. After this, we only put the read, write data. It's the higher performance than normal read and write data. This access type is possible in both S7 PLCs, but in S7 1200 it's not good to use because in S7 1200 we can't make the high performance, so it's useless. In 1200 this option works the same like in read and write access type. So this option is made for 1500 PLCs. We can register on OPC client on the tags, DB components, arrays and structures. We can use this also for application for repeated accessing for tags, DB components. We need to remember that after we loss of session, we close the, for example, the client, we need to register again to make this read and write with this option. Maximum number of registered nodes must be set on OPC UA server, and only OPC UA server only OPC UA server can make this maximum number registered nodes settings, and OPC UA client cannot change this. Next access type is the subscription. This subscription is used for the load reduction for HME and monitoring application. Again, we have OPC UA server on the PLC and we have OPC UA client on computer. OPC UA client is asking with the sampling mode, for example 1 second, every 1 second we want to sample data. After we make the sampling, the OPC UA server is publishing for us the data. The sampling and publishing times can be different. For example, sampling can be 10 milliseconds and publishing can be 1 second. It's not so hard. This option is possible in both S7 1200 and 1500 PLCs. In subscription access types, we can monitor PLC tags, we can monitor DB components, array structures. We can also transfer the change of log on the tag, so every time the tag is changed, the OPC UA server is giving us the information. The minimum transmission intervals are permanently defined in the server configuration, and the minimum configured transmission intervals in the server are predominant. Faster intervals requested by a client will be revised to these values. So if our client won't get data faster than OPC UA have in configuration, so client can get this as fast as he has in client, and all data and all settings must be predominant to OPC UA server configuration. Last option to access type in OPC UA is methods. It's consistent data transmission. And again, we have OPC UA server on PLC and we have computer with OPC UA client. OPC UA client is sending the call request, is the method, and if our server allow to call this request, the server send the response. This option is possible only in S7 1500 and it's not possible in 1200 PLCs. This method is provided and programmed by the OPC UA server, and OPC UA client sees the I/O and receive the status of these elements. Only one call per instance can be made. Another OPC UA client can only access the method following execution or a timeout. So we have only one client can work with this method with one server. Now we see the server limits in OPC UA in S7 family. As you see on screen, we have some functionality, the maximum number of sessions, maximum monitor nodes, minimal sampling interval, minimum publishing interval, recommended maximum subscribed item count, concurred subscription. In S7 1200 we have only possible to make the 5 sessions. We can allow to monitor 500 nodes. The minimal sampling interval is 100 milliseconds. Minimum publishing interval is 200 milliseconds. Recommended maximum subscribed item count is only 100. And concurred subscription is 5. As you see, for example, on the higher level of the PLC S7 1518, we have maximum number of sessions 64. We can make the maximum monitor nodes 200,000 elements. The minimal sampling interval is 10 milliseconds, publishing also 10 milliseconds, and we can make the subscription for 10,000 elements, but on 1 second sampling and 1 second publishing. It's very high. Where we should use this OPC UA access types? If you want to use the single or rare access of data, we can use read and write data, because only we read or write data and we leave this OPC UA client server alone. In HIME application in SCADA system, we should use the subscription, and every time the tag we want to subscribe is changing, we see the new value inside our HIME panel or SCADA system or MES or Android application. If you want to make the repeated access for some nodes, we can use the registered read and write data. So if we only want to read data from one temperature sensor, for example every 1 minute, we can make the register read data from this node, and it will be high performance for this element. But what about the consistent data transmission? We should always use the methods, because it's the best way to make the consistent data transmission from S7 1500. I hope now you understand how we can use the access types in OPC UA server and client. We will go with practical mode with all these elements in all access types. For now, thanks for watching, and let's go to next lecture.